You're now watching the Vision Channel, where Habakkuk 2 and 2 says, write the vision and make it plain, so they that see it can take it and run with it. This is the channel where faith and vision collide to bring forth a manifestation. You're watching the Vision Channel.
Good evening, everyone. You're now tuning in live to Merge, broadcasting from the Vision Channel, and I'm your host for tonight's show, Minister Chandria. And tonight is a very special night because I'm really intrigued by what we're going to be talking about and what we're going to be expressing. Tonight we're going to be talking about the one and only Apostle Tyrance Greer, and I feel like tonight is going to be a personal night. It's also going to be a night that we're going to gain clarity, because sometimes God has a special way of cleaning up an individual and making them look nothing like their past. That's one of the best things about God. He knows how to remove any type of residue or any type of staining from your past, and he'll give you a greater purpose. And I believe that's one of the biggest things when it came down to the life of Apostle Tyrance Greer here. So how are you doing tonight, Apostle?
Doing wonderful in yourself.
I'm doing well. I'm excited about tonight, being that I love to get into the personable things when it comes to individual, because again, it blesses me when I'm able to see God make a major transformation. Even when it came down to my own life, it blesses me to see how God can transfigure and transform an individual and make them to be exactly who he has designed and created for them to be. So without further ado, I'm going to jump straight into tonight. We're going to, again, be talking about Apostle Tyrance Greer's life. I want to talk about your childhood really briefly. How was your childhood?
Oh, my childhood. You know, really and truly, I had a great childhood. I did. I went through some challenges as a child, before birth, during the process of birth, and even being born as a child. I mean, it predates me as an existence, because time doesn't start until physically you really come out. So just that alone, the challenges that my mother had just with me alone, carrying me and releasing me out of one season into a next season. My childhood, it was great because my mother loved me, but there had to be something about my life to where opposition would come even as a child. I can remember when we were living in Chicago that I had a dream. I would have dreams and visions, and I would have dreams and visions of heaven, and I can hear, beings talking to me from a little kid, from a young age. And I'll never forget the first time that I heard this voice, and this voice asked me, was I ready to come home? I'll never forget that. And I said no. And after I said no, right after that, I would have dreams of Rockwellers. I didn't know they were Rockwellers at the time. I didn't know. But they were 3 dogs, huge dogs, and they all had red eyes. And there was an owner that was behind the dogs, but the owner would release the dogs against me. I didn't know what that was a sign of because I was still a child. But they would chase me off of a cliff. And by me being chased off a cliff, before I can hit the point of a mountain, I would wake up. I would wake up out of the dream. Now, little would I know later on in life that I didn't know where these dogs came from, because I didn't have understanding at that time of dreams and visions. I didn't understand it. But as I got older, I'll never forget that when my father got ready to pass, my sister told me that he barricaded himself in his room and wouldn't allow people to come in. And I would find out that they asked him, once they finally broke back into the room, well, what happened? Why did you barricade yourself in the room? He said, because there was 3 dogs with red eyes that were chasing me. And I understood as an adult, as a child, there were generational doors that were open that were after me, that they knew me. They wanted to take me out as a child before I could ever become an adult, because they had a glimpse of who I was to become, even though I didn't know who I was supposed to become. But as a child, it was something about my life that they knew. And I survived my childhood. And as I grew, when we moved from Chicago, we moved here to Houston. And my mother, my mother, she instilled in us that we would go to church. Now, with my mom, if you didn't have a choice, my mom actually had buses from a church to come and pick us up, and we didn't have a choice whether we had the option to go or not, because she installed in us that we had to have some relationship with Christ. And I think this is where everything started with me. It started with me as a child, because people didn't have to prompt me or prime me to get baptized or nothing like that, or me to give my life to Christ. It was just something in me that drew it. It's just like magnets, the same type of material that the second you get close to it, all of a sudden something will draw you to it. And I was telling the preachers, I was like, look, I want to be baptized. Didn't even know what the baptism was all about. I didn't even know what church was about, but I knew that it was something that was in me that was drawing me closer to what I had in Chicago. I didn't know that as a child, but I had adversities, I had challenges, I had people didn't like me, I had people that would mistreat me as a child but didn't know the essence of my being or who I was as a child. And as I began to grow and grow, I didn't realize that I had these potentials, that people would come to me for answers, adults, and I can tell them what was wrong. I can tell them about their relationships. I can tell them certain things that would transpire and take place. And I can tell, and didn't know who they were, where they were, didn't ever meet people, but I knew as a child that grown people would come to me and I would give them answers and give them clarity. It was wisdom that I had that I didn't know that I had, but I had this as a child. And I grew up.
Before we get into you growing up and, of course, maturing, and because we know a lot of times whenever you grow up, that's when life gets real. That's when you learn everything about yourself. Truths start to come out that you never knew about. One thing that you stated was that you learned early on about generational curses. So it was something that you were able to identify even as a child. One thing that I would like to ask you right now, did you grow up in a single parent household?
I grew up in a single parent household, partially. My mom took care of 8 of us. She took care of 8 of us, and my mother's a soldier. She did everything that she can possibly do to raise men. One of the most difficult and challenging things that it is in society is to raise men. It's okay to raise girls because you can do their hair, you can talk to them, you can warn them about boys, but just the wisdom that you have to have in order to raise men. You have to raise boys to men. And sometimes our influences, because in Chicago it was all gang related. Everything around us in Chicago was gang related. It was. And the gangs in Chicago are completely different. You know, they'll kill you, your grandmother, your children. So it was gang related. So how it was in Chicago, whether you were living in an environment, whether you were in the gang or not, if you was in the neighborhood, you was associated with the gang. So the gang wanted you to be in the gang because you were in the neighborhood. So if you stepped outside of the neighborhood, then people would naturally assume that you was a part of the gang. So and we found ourselves in controversy, brother them, sister them, just that environment alone where we were getting in trouble at an early age, just being associated with an environment. So I'll say this, one of the greatest challenges we have in environments, when you're children, you're like sponges. So sponges, we absorb the environment that we're in. But the problem with the sponge, when you use a sponge, you 9 times out of 10 use the sponges for spills, something that has been wasted. And because we lived in an environment where we were sponges, so we adapted to the environment, we soaked up the environment. But if you and when you're in these environments, if you're not careful when you're a sponge, because I said sponges are used for things that are wasted. So us as sponges, it was so easy to adapt to a life that was wasted. So people who have wasted their life on drugs, if you wasn't careful as a sponge, then you would absorb their lifestyle by you being a sponge, because now you're on drugs because they were on drugs. You're a sponge. So people that became alcoholics, They became addicted. So as sponges, we would absorb the wastage of their life, and we would pick up the lifestyle, the habit, the mannerisms. We would pick up all of that because we were sponges. And not careful, if you're not careful, your life will be completely wasted due to gang violence. So because we were sponges, if you wasn't careful, you would soak up that environment. And whatever you place in a sponge, you cannot get out of it what you have not put in it. And so you cannot change the individual's mind because that sponge, that individual, soaked up the life of somebody that was around them. They soaked up that environment. And this is why my mother made the conscious decision to not stay in Chicago, because I truly believe had we stayed in Chicago, none of us would have survived it. I believe none of us would have survived Chicago, period. So we migrated down to Houston in Texas, and it made life a whole lot easier. So we didn't have to deal with gangs, but we had to deal with spirits.
So now you are stepping into a different territory, a different atmosphere. Would you say that not having a father, the absence of having a father, it took a major toll on you in your life?
Not having a father, which means I didn't have anybody to model the way. I didn't. A father figure. A figure who was a father, not someone who was a donor. Because sometimes we have donors and not fathers. Or we have men but not fathers. Or we have males and the males are not fathers. So I didn't have that role model. So what got me through life was love. It was the love of my mother that expressed the love of my Heavenly Father. Because my mother loved me unconditionally. My mother has been always there for me. My mother was always on my side, no matter what I got involved in, no matter what I got. So it was the love of a mother that showed me the expression of a father. Even though I didn't have a father figure. I didn't have that father figure at the time, but it was the love of my mother because I didn't want to break my mother's heart by me making mistakes, and eventually I would make mistakes. But it affected my life because I was looking for my father. When I was at school, I would see every other father come that would support their children in basketball or sports, and my father wasn't there. So it I'm not going to say it tarnished my heart, but it touched my heart. It touched my heart to the fact that I was wondering where was my father, because my father didn't want to be bothered. And so I grew up with the complex. I grew up with the chip on my shoulder. I grew up upset at my father. And it's some things, and it stems sometimes when you're in one home, when you only have one parent in the home, and sometimes that's where frustration comes. So you grow up angry, you grow up upset, you grow up bitter, because sometimes you wonder what's wrong with you. And so if you're not careful, you still become a product of your own environment. Because the absence of a father, and sometimes this thing can stem generational curses. Because if you never saw it, how can you be what you didn't see? So growing up like that, yes, just stemming from that, you would have some type of discomfort not growing up without your father being a part of your life. Yeah.
So jumping into that, because being a male, being a man, growing from a little boy into a man, and I would say the same thing for females growing into, young little girls growing into young women, then later on to women. I would say that you deal with a lot of different emotions. You deal with emotional battles. You deal with a lot of loneliness, being alone. You stated that there was a complex. You feel like there was a complex within yourself. So it's something eventually that you would have to face. And then dealing with some anger and different things like that. What type of child were you? Because oftentimes you have the child that's the go-getter, the one that they put labels on, because when you're a child, that's what happens. You have family members or different individuals that are over you, and they'll say things about you. Okay, they're going to be the president, they're going to be a doctor, you're going to be the criminal, you're going to be the problem child, and they place labels and they put different type of stereotypes and say things about you. What type of child were you? How would they identify you as a young man, as a little boy?
I'll say this, and this is as I grew a little bit because I was different. The parents in the community didn't want me around their kids. They didn't want me around their kids because they gave me two destinations. The two destinations, one said that I would be in hell, and the other said I would be in jail. There were two destinations that they spoke over my life, and they told their children that they didn't want me around their children because they said that I was a wrong influence over their life. Now, of course, I didn't go out and at that time do nothing crazy at that time, but they just didn't believe that their children should hang around me in my community.
Sorry, you were saying that you're a bad influence
That's what I was labeled
at
as.
the time.
I was labeled as a bad influence.
Okay. So fast forward a little bit. They look at you, okay, don't hang out with him. He's not a good example for you. He's not a good friend to have, so don't associate with him. And then later on, you start to make decisions that evolve from being labeled as that or being in a single parent household and not getting everything that you needed as a child. You said that you did have love and your mother loved you, which is great. But anytime that you have something absent in your life, and that we know this, you'll search and try to make different substitutes and place things in areas where there's a void because you're looking to fill it. So whether it's good or bad, it can be sexual habits, it can be drugs, it can be alcohol, it can be alternative lifestyles. It can be multiple things that will cause or affect you to do something opposite than what was instilled in the household that you came from. So, getting into that, what was one of the passions that you found?
One of the passions that I found, honestly, growing up, was basketball. I think that was one of my passions that was instilled in me from a child. It was like an out to me. It took me literally out of my environment. It took me out of being angry because I can utilize all of my time, my energy, and my strength. As a kid, I'd utilize that to try to perfect what I did, perfect the shot, perfect dunking, perfect dribbling. So I would utilize a lot of my time to mask my pain, and I would try to expend that playing basketball. That became one of my passions and my love as a child. That was the way that I can get out of trouble or stay out of trouble because trouble would find me. Trouble would be around me. It would find me. And that was my way of getting out because I didn't have a father. That was the way that I can express myself in a manner to where I couldn't hurt people.
To dive just a little bit into that trouble, you
Mhm.
don't have to tell us all
Mhm.
of the trouble that would find you, but just kind of touch bases on some of the areas and some of the points of trouble that will find you because oftentimes that is true.
Mhm.
When you try to do good, what does the word of God say? Evil is always present. And that's true because as soon as you make up your mind, okay, I'm not gonna do this, I'm not gonna do that, and it's always a part of you that says there's an identity, there's a vision that I have of myself that I don't not want to become, but all these things around me, all these temptations, all these many different various things that are calling me, and you get caught up in those things, and then you forget or you deter from the path that God has set for you. So, what were some of those things for you?
And one of the things I'll say, the troubles with me, people in my neighborhood, because of my ability to influence people with what they say, I could fight. I could, because I could. That was just the way that I did things, because I could. I was. It was hard for me to manage my anger. I didn't have anger management because I didn't have God. Because I stepped away from God as I got older. Because now I can make my own decisions. My mother was not making decisions for me. So the bus, I didn't have to go to church anymore. So as I got older, my pain shaped me. but it blocked God out because I loved God as a kid. But as I got older, the pain of the absence of a natural father gave me this rage inside of me, and it was hard for me to control my rage. I used to punch holes in walls, punch windows out. I did that because I didn't have that fatherly love. I needed someone to guide me, to direct me, because that's what I was looking for. I was looking for the love of a father, even though I had the love of a mother. And so people in my neighborhood, they would follow me and they would listen to me, because if they didn't, I didn't become a bully. I was never a bully. I was never a bully, so I got into other things. And people knew me in the streets based on the skills that I learned with my hands. So they knew me. So, and I know people may see me now, but this is the evolve me. This is the part that God evolved. But there's a part to me to where okay, and I'm just gonna say this because this is my testimony. I was a person that people would call to hurt people. I was that person. I was just like in scriptorial, I would use the word Saul. So Saul didn't like Christians. It wasn't that I had something against Christians. I just didn't. But people would call me. I was hired to hurt you. People would call me. This is what I need you to do. This is where I need you to go. It was my responsibility and my job to hire. I was hired to hurt people. And so, and God had to. God, you see, one thing that I love about God though, because I was Saul before then. I was Saul. And all I knew was how to express myself was with my hands. It was to hurt people because I was hurt. So I understand the phrase or the term hurting people hurt people because I was hurt. Then I could hurt people because this was another way that I can express my pain. I can bring pain because I was consumed by pain. And because of this, I got an opportunity because I got in a lot of trouble. I did. I never went to jail. I never went to jail. God graced me that I never went to jail, even though I should have did prison time. I should have been in jail the rest of my life for things that I've done. I should have been. Some of the things that I did, I should have been in jail the rest of my life. As a matter of fact, throughout the course of my life, God was showing me glimpses of his grace. So when I hear the message grace, I don't have to hear the message per se because I can look back through my entire life where he gave me glimpses of grace to where he intervened in my life, and I wasn't even apart. I wasn't even with God. I wasn't even serving God. I wasn't even worshiping him. I can remember a time, I'm going to use one of these just for people. Just for people. I can remember one time. I'll never forget this time. And I'll never forget this. And this is, once something happened in your life, when you know it's God, like car accidents. I was in car accidents, and I walked away from car accidents, nothing. I had guns pointed at my face, and they pulled the trigger, but the gun itself never went off. It jammed. I survived it. I had knives. I've been cut with knives. I've had stuff where I had my head cut, my shoulder broke, a hole in my back. I got stuff cut in my side. Had all kind of stitches, had cuts in my arms, so I had to get 45 stitches in my arms. I mean, I went through all type of events, and I got up and walked away from different events. And God was later on, he would show me, and I'll never forget. I was at this place where I was staying, and 17 FBI agents came to my house. 17. Now, strange as it may sound, because I'm giving people the real parts of my life, not the watered down parts. As I'm laying on the couch, I hear a voice tell me, before I even know they finna come in, say, put the drugs in this purse. I'm hearing a voice. I listened to the voice that I heard, put it in the purse, and the feds come in. The feds come in, 17. Guns on their shoulders, guns are strapped, the strap guns that they had, guns, 2 guns on their side, a gun in their hand. I even seen guns on their legs, 1 gun on their leg. I remember seeing they came through the house, they searched the house, had me on video, and they let me walk away. Evidence, but let me walk away. And when I reflect and look back on that, that's why I said God has given me glimpses of grace because of my lifestyle, that he was showing me all the mistakes and errors that I made, that he was there the entire time. I didn't know it at the time, but he was there the entire time, protecting me and covering me, because I should have had prison time. I should have been dead when bullets were ringing out all around me. Bullets, my own gun pointed at me. So there was a purpose for me living, and I didn't know that purpose yet, because I was functioning out of pain and I didn't know my purpose. But he gave me grace through it, that even though I didn't know what grace was, but I would be introduced to who grace was. As Jesus would say, he is grace and truth. I would be introduced to grace. And I know most people see me now, they say, well, man, you've been this way all of your life. You've been preaching. You've been in church all your life. No. I got away from the church a long time ago. And when you're growing up, I got away, and I became a part of society, a part of the world. So when all of this transpired and took place, that's what I did. I did what the world did. I function as the world. Because of my pain, I had became a product of my own environment. I absorbed it. I absorbed being a hitman. I absorbed selling drugs. I absorbed it. It was a part of my environment. I didn't have anything else to absorb, so I absorbed it. I absorbed it, and whatever came in, came out. And it didn't matter to me if I lived, or it didn't matter to me if I died. It didn't matter, because that was my environment. And I learned throughout my environment that men don't cry. Men don't shed tears. If we live, we live. If we die, we die. But we live for the moment. And it was all about love and brotherhood. That's what it was all about, because I was a product of my environment.
When it comes down to your life, a lot of what you express, you're very transparent.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some that will go through life and they'll have drug addictions, and then there are some that'll have alcoholic addictions. What addiction did you have?
You know, I never got involved in drugs, never got involved in alcohol. I just believed in that. But one of my addictions were women. It was. I was addicted to women, and this is why I can be transparent and I can tell people this, because the reason that I was addicted to women, because my heart was broken. When my heart became broken, that was it for me. There was no love. That was it. Once my heart was broken, I said, that's it. That's it. So women were introduced to me. I took on a whole nother demeanor. That was it. So I said my heart would never be broken again. I was already broken. I was broken because of the absence of a father. I was broken because there was an absence of love, an absence of leadership. So when I got in a relationship, I thought the relationship was for a lifetime, but that relationship didn't last a lifetime, but it almost cost me a lifetime of pain. So I said, no longer will I give my heart to anyone. And I was in relationships and with women, but I was numb. I didn't have any feelings. Nothing. And I was doing it because I experienced pain.
You talked about the generational curse and the tie to your father. A dream that you had, if you're just tuning in, Apostle expressed a dream that he had as a young child, something that he was able to see, and also how it tied into a situation that his father battled with, which opened a door in your life. How does what you experience and what your father experienced, how does that tie in with the addiction when it comes down to women?
The same thing. My father addiction was women. And no matter what I said that I would not be like my father, but because the doors were open to that, that became a part of a generational curse as well, because that was my father's issue. So just as Solomon and David opened the door, and no matter what Solomon tried to do, he ended up having 1,000 wives, 700 wives, and 300 concubines, because David opened the door. With the generations that come behind him, it only got greater. And with me, it only got greater. It intensified because my father had opened the door to a generational curse. And even though I said I would not be like the man, I would not like the man, I would not be around him, I'm not going to do the things that he did, but because it didn't matter what I said, but because that door was open to the generation. You know, and I've said this on some of our broadcasts, when the Bible said the spirit goes and it said it leaves a person, and when it comes back, it says it's going to go into a dry place to find rest. And then it said when they come back to find the house swept and garnished, she said, I will return back to my house. Well, that word house means generations. And that's what happened when it came to me and my father, that when it came to this generation, it came back to me to say, okay, this house is swept and garnished. I'll go and get 7 more demons more powerful than me. And then in the process of all this transpiring and taking place, it would be worse than this the first time, the second time than the first time. And that's what happened. I had an insatiable appetite, and I was addicted to women, but I was numb. There was still a void. No matter how many women I was with around, I was still numb, and there was still a void because I wasn't being satisfied, and there was no fulfillment, and I didn't know what the fulfillment was or how to satisfy myself, and I only did it when I thought it was because it was done from a fleshly standpoint, but it never satisfied me. It never gratified me because I still had the void even though I had women.
Jesus. So you're growing up, you have this addiction to women, but you still have this passion for basketball. How did that go for you? How did you know, or when did that change for you?
The passion for basketball? The passion for basketball, it changed. I'll never forget as I began to get older. I mean, people used to come and just watch me. I've been in magazines. I've been on television. I played in Vegas, and I've been Chicago playing basketball, everywhere you can possibly go. I played with pros, and pros actually thought I was in the NBA. And I'll never forget. I'm trying to remember. I was getting ready to try for the Cavaliers. I had messed up my ankle, and my mom, because I just knew I was going to go, and I was getting ready to go to the NBA. I was going to go to the NBA, and that was my projection. It was. That's where I was headed to, but I didn't go to the doctor like my mom told me. And I'll never forget when I was in the hotel room getting ready to try for the Cavaliers. That same voice when I was doing wrong, when the FBI was getting ready to come into the house, that same voice. The same voice said a word to me. It spoke to me, and it said, if you come to me, I'll give you anything you want. It's crazy that I was able to identify the voice. I said something because I didn't know it was the Holy Spirit at that time. I didn't know God was speaking to me. So I said, something told me if I just come to him, then he'll give me anything that I want. And it's in the process of that. I went to the trial and all that, and I couldn't be myself because my ankle was messed up. So, and in the process of all that transpiring and taking place, I went to church. My mom was, and this is one thing I say I love about my mom. My mom initiated me going to church when I was a child. So God used my mother again because of the love that I had for her to get me back in God. She invited me to a church. She invited me to a barbecue to the church she was attending. Yeah. So I went and I said, okay. All right, okay. I'll go, Mama. I'll go. Because my mom was like, you going to go to church? You got all right, Mama, I'll go to church. I'll go to church. And I went to church, And I heard something. I heard something that God would come to me through a man and tell me what he knew about me that only me and God knew. It captivated my attention. It blew me away because I couldn't believe that a man could express something that I was struggling with behind closed doors. God was captivating my attention again, and I didn't know it. And that drew me closer and closer back to God through the man. And that's what started my hunger and my desire. And I never forget I became a member of this ministry, and I started reading my Bible again and all of the other stuff. And he came to me one day and he said, the Lord said he see you reading your Bible again. He see you trying to get close to him. That he didn't know that I was doing that because it was just me by myself. And it was at that point my first love started leaving. And I'll never forget my pastor at that time came to me and asked me, he said, man, do you still want to go overseas and play basketball? And I told him, I said, no. It's not that I didn't have the ability. I just didn't have the heart because my heart was shifting. My first love now became God. I wanted to eat him, drink him, breathe him. That's all I desired because he allowed me. See, I didn't get, I know people have experiences in church where they roll around, they fall on the floor. No. My experience was at home. It wasn't at church. Because where I come from, we don't show emotions. We don't. And I asked God a question. I said, if you are as real as everyone say you are, show me. And I will never forget. This altered my life the rest of my life. I was laying in my bed. I woke up out of the bed and I just started thanking God for the day. Lord, thank you. I thank you for, blessing me. Thank you for waking me up. And at that time, I was a bodybuilder. I was 275 pounds. I got up out of the bed and the Spirit of God hit me in such a way to where it pushed me on the floor. I couldn't get up. I'm crying uncontrollably, weeping. But didn't know at the time that it was his presence. I didn't understand that he had came and gave me a visitation. There was a visitation that came from heaven to where, as strong as I was, I could not get up and I was crying uncontrollably. But he answered my prayer, show me. So I understand through scriptures when Gideon had his fleece, when he was telling God, if you're going to give me victory, then let the fleece be wet and the ground be dry. He wrings the fleece out and comes back to tell God, if you're going to give me victory, don't be mad at me. But if you're going to give me victory, have the ground to be wet and the fleece to be dry. So he wanted to make sure, he wanted an encounter from God. It's the same thing with Jacob, and I think it's in Genesis chapter 28, verses 20 and 21, that he has an encounter with God where angels are sending to sin, and Jacob wakes up out of his dream and tell God. He said, listen, he said, the Lord was in this place and I knew it not. He said, listen, God, if you can bring me back to this country, bring me back and give me clothes and give me raiment. He said, then I'll serve you and then you'll be my God. But it was based on the statement that he made. And sometimes when God is trying to draw you, he'll answer that prayer for you in a baby stage. It was baby stages that he was drawing me because he did it based on my request. And my hunger and my passion and my desire, it grew. So basketball was no longer, it became like a requisitional thing for me. It wasn't a passion for me. I lost that passion and picked up the passion for Christ. I lost the passion for it. I lost it. My passion changed, but my passion changed for Christ. And everything in me, just as it was in basketball. In basketball, I can play basketball 12, 13, 14 hours a day. It didn't matter. my passion changed and my passion grew for Christ. And I used to study, worship, pray, and read my Bible 13, 14 hours a day. I would fall asleep reading my Bible because my passion changed. I didn't want anything else but him.
So, from all that I gathered from everything that you expressed, this is your place of conversion.
Mm-hmm.
So, we talked about this on a previous interview in reference to you knowing when God had called you into ministry.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to ask, how did you know you were chosen?
You know, one of the things that, and me being in my environment, I'll never forget the Lord had me to read, had me to go to a scripture, Jeremiah chapter 1 and verse 5. He had me to read this scripture, and at the time, I didn't even know what it was. It said, before I formed you, I knew you, and I ordained you to be a prophet among the nations. And he had me to read a little bit further, and that everything that I tell you to say, and I was like, okay, that's easy. That's an easy thing. That's not difficult. I didn't know at the time how difficult it would become. And he told me, like, you, before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you, and I sanctified you, and I ordained you to be a prophet. And I'm saying, what in the world is a prophet? I didn't know, because I was from the streets. So I had not had an encounter with any kind of prophet except the man of God that I ended up meeting, and a young lady I ended up meeting later. But when he told me that, I didn't even know what a prophet was. I didn't know. It's like, what is that? I'm trying to research and trying to find it, but the words that I heard was so clear. This is what I called you. And I think some people with me, I guess I'll explain it a little later. With me, it's not a gift. Some people think I have the gift of prophecy. They think God gave me a gift. He didn't give me a gift. He gave me him. And they can associate it with a gift, but it's not that, because I'm not limited to prophecy. I'm not limited to prophesying. I'm not limited to. So God gave me him. So every dimensional sphere that he want to express himself through me, then he'll allow me to express it. But in the beginning is what he told me before you were born. And that's the difference between a leader and a follower. I'm just a follower. Some people may consider me to be a leader. I'm just a follower, as Paul would say. He say, follow me as I follow Christ. And it's in following where he taught me and where he made me to be a greater follower. When he came to the apostles, they were disciples then. He say, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. So it's following to where he can make you. Some people are made following, but some people are made at birth, because he told Jeremiah, before I formed you in your mother's womb, he said, I knew you, but I made you a prophet among the nation. So some people come here already made, even though they still have to follow. It's me following. Follow my voice. My sheep know my voice, and a stranger they will not follow. It's following. So I've learned throughout my course in Christendom to follow. I never wanted to be a leader. I wanted to be a follower. I wanted to follow Christ. And the more I followed him, the more he revealed what was in me. The more he revealed what he had created me to be. The more that I followed him. And right now, people may think because I have a ministry and I have all this stuff, and they may say, well, you got this. It's not about that. It's about following. All this came when I followed. I never knew what was hidden. I never knew Israel was hidden inside of my Jacob. I was Jacob. And as I followed him, layers fell off. Just as onion has layers, and sometimes these onions, when you're taking off the layers, it make you cry. It makes your eye ducts. And I made people cry. My God, today. I made people cry because I was an onion. Not knowing that onions, if it's used right, is used for seasoning. not understanding that there's a flavor that comes with onions. There's nutrients that come with onions. But God needed to have me, to take me, to shape me, and to mold me, to break me down, because onions need to be broke down if they're going to be useful. So I had to be broke down so that he can use the onions, not to make people cry, but to season people, to gratify people, to make people feel gratified and satisfied, to bring them fulfillment. I didn't understand that my purpose. I didn't understand why he created me. And he began to take off the layers of pain, the layers from my past, the layers from me being hurt, the layers from me being rejected, the layers from people ostracizing me and criticizing. He began to take off all those layers to get to the real me. And when he got to the real me, he said, follow me and I'll make you. And as I began to follow, he began to make. And he began to make, just as he did with Peter. Peter, follow me. Because I was so used with the sword. Like Peter had the sword. He said, Peter, those who live by it die by it. I had to learn to lay down what I had because I thought that was more valuable than anything else. And I had to pick up Christ. I had to trust him unconditionally. And I'll tell you this. And today it sounds like, okay, it was an easy transition. It wasn't an easy transition. It's just like children and parents. They have to wing them off of certain things. So they have to wing them off of formula. You got to be winged. Babies got to be winged off formula because they outgrow the formula that they drink. So now you have to wing them to whole milk. And what God was doing with me when it came to society and it came to the world, he had to wean me off of that. Anything that did not make me whole, he had to wing me off of it. Just like they have to drink whole milk, he had to wing me off of everything in the world that did not make me whole. And it wasn't easy. Just like babies have pacifiers. I wanted to be pacified. I wanted to be pacified, but God had to take me off of my pacifier. And I'll never forget what God told me. I'll never forget. As I was reading my Bible, and he told me, he said, you cannot ask me for anything worldly. Anything of this earth, you cannot ask me for. You can't ask me for a house. You can't ask me for a car. You can't ask me for buildings and this and that. Anything that would infect me and not affect me, he was weaning me off of it. You can't have this. What I'm giving you is me. I can ask for everybody else. I can pray for everybody else, but I cannot pray for something that he doesn't want me to possess. You can't ask me for anything worldly. He weaned me off of the world and said, keep following. If you lose the job, you haven't lost me. Keep following. If you lose the car and the car breakdown, if you don't have money to get another car, he said, keep following me. And he taught me and he weaned me off of the world system that all I ever desire is him. All that ever matters to me is him. And how I found greater depths of him is when I lost me. See, I've learned this. In death, you'll find the depths of God. It's in your death is where you will find the depths of God. And the more I died, the more he lived in me. The more he began to consume me, the more he revealed to me, the more that he trusted me, the more that he would show me how much he loved me, the more he would reveal to himself. When I lost me, I gained him. But that was through following him.
You expressed that the process wasn't easy for you in transformation because sometimes, I'm not going to lie, you make it look easy.
Huh?
I say that in the most respectful way. I'm being completely honest because that's where the true differentiation comes from. That's how you're able to identify a true relationship with God and what religion is, and that's just being completely honest. So that's one of the things that I thank God for when it comes to you is because you truly carry heavily uniqueness. Mm-hmm. Because you're not created or made the same. None of us are. But that's something that God allowed you to come into very much so early. One of the things, again, that I want to ask you is how was that, go a little bit more in depth as far as that process of recovery, because some people, they backslide. They have moments of, okay, God, I want to go backward. I don't want to stay in this. This is too hard. It's too intense. How did you get past those moments?
I'm a loyalist. So when I commit to something, I commit all the way. If I say I love you, That's it. I don't change love because of circumstances, situations. My love doesn't change. When I love hard. I give all to what I say I love. Like I said, I love basketball. It was my passion. I would spend 16, 14, 12 hours a day. I would start at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I wouldn't stop until 1 or 2 o'clock at night. It was my passion. That's all I did. I committed my life to it because I wanted the best out of it. I wanted to be the best at it. So when it came down to transition, I remember, I'll never forget. I'll never forget this. And see, I know some people say that they found God. I didn't find God. He revealed that he was there for me. I didn't find him. I did because I didn't know where he was. He let me know that he's been there all this time for me. And I'm going to get into it. And in him revealing to me that he's been there for me. You know, the Bible said that no man can come to Jesus unless the Father has drawn him. So the Father was drawing me through calamity, through downfall. And when he revealed to me that he existed with that encounter that I had, I told him, I said, I don't care what leaves as long as you stay. He didn't take me on it, but Satan did. Because Satan heard the words that I said, and he was testing me. See, that's the difference between tempted, being tested. I was being tempted, and God allowed him to tempt me based on what I asked him. I said, I don't care what happened, what leaves, whatever leaves, it doesn't matter. As long as you stay, I will remain. And I never forget the first year, in the same year, the job that I had that I loved, I made a lot of money. The job goes away. Car that I bought a car cash, beautiful car, expensive car. The car breaks down. The woman I was married to, my first wife, this happened in the same year, said, I'm leaving you in October. Lose the job, lose the car breaks down. And now the woman that I love, that I had been with for 8 years, said, I'm leaving you in October. Because of one statement. One. And people in my church thought that I was crazy. Because the job that I made, it afforded me to buy all type of suits. I bought a whole bunch of suits because I love suits. And I didn't have a job. Car broke down. People were coming to get me to take me to church. Crazy. And my wife was getting ready to walk away. So I started taking suits that still had tags on them in my closet and started giving it to men in the church to present themselves to look right as priests and men of God when they came to church. No money, no job, car broke down, bum and rides to get to church, and my wife walks away. And I looked up to heaven as I was taking suits out of my closet, and people thought I was crazy. Even the pastor told me to stop giving. See, nothing else mattered. No clothes, no car, no wife. Nothing mattered to me. Nothing. The only thing that mattered was him. This is how he developed me, because all I desired was him. And I told him, I said, Lord, I told you I didn't care what left as long as you stayed. As long as, and I never forget, I came out of my house. I looked at the car. I said, Lord, what do you want me to do with this car? He said, give it away. Car broke down. Watch this. Went upstairs in a shoebox where I kept the title. Grabbed the title. He told me the person to take it to. Drove it to the person's house and started walking home. Dropped the car and the titles off and began to walk back home, because the car didn't matter, the wife didn't matter, the clothes didn't matter, the job didn't matter. Nothing mattered more to me than him. As long as I had him, I had security. I had my safety. Nothing else mattered to me. Nothing mattered. And I'll never forget, after all of it transpired and took place, I'll never forget the Lord. I asked him, I said, well, God, why did this happen? Did I do something wrong? And God said, no, you didn't do anything wrong. He says, Satan was just looking to see what you was attached to that would detach you away from me. He wanted to see, would it be if I took the car, if I took the job? I'll find a way to get you to detach yourself away from who you say you love, because what you was attached to, nothing mattered. I only wanted him. I only desired him. If I had to sleep inside of a garbage can, I would have slept inside of a garbage can just thanking him and praising him and worshiping. Nothing mattered to me but him, my love for him and my compassion, just the grace that he showed me. The love and his compassion. Nothing ever mattered. It was the point of that conversion that I was like Paul said, I was fully persuaded. And from that day to this day, I don't care what type of calamity comes, I'm fully persuaded I will not deny him. I will not reject him. I will not, because I'm fully persuaded in him.
Just that alone, we can take that and we can run a mile with it. Because you said so much, even in what you said. One thing that I gathered is when you put your mind to something, you do it. And it kind of reminds me even of the generation that we're faced with right now. And I believe that your testimony will truly be a blessing and a light to a lot of them, even at the ages that they are now, because they're so strong minded and they believe in loyalty. And a lot of them believe in whatever I desire is what I'm going to work for. And that's the generation that we live in right now. And I truly believe your testimony will be a testament to them to bring them out of what they're in, because we go through so much and they struggle with so much and they battle with so much. And every now and then you need to know that someone is going through the same thing that you've gone through and that they've overcome it. And I believe that your life is that. It truly is a testament of how you turn pain into purpose, because you are looking for what you were looking for. God allowed you to go through different processes of life, as far as, like, loving basketball and having these strong desires for women and X, Y, and Z and A, B, and C, to bring you to him, what you were missing. So yes, your natural father probably was not present, but your spiritual father was always there for you. And I truly thank God for that. So going through all that you've gone through now, and we are coming to a close, but going through all that you've gone through now, would you have changed anything?
No.
Nothing.
I wouldn't change anything.
No regrets.
To change my past changes my future.
Jesus, that's all right. That's all right.
If I was to change any part of my past, then I would miss the glimpses of his glory and the glimpses of grace. I would miss my change. I would miss my metamorphosis. I would miss the moments that I had to spend with him. I would miss it. And this is why I say I follow him. Most people consider me to be a leader, but they don't know I'm just a follower. And I allow him to lead. So if I missed anything in my life, any mishap, any misfortune, how would I know him as a Savior? How would I know him as my Lord? How would I know him as Jehovah Rapha? How would I know him as Jehovah Nisi? How would I know him as Jehovah Shalom? See, these are not names that I just picked up in the Bible. These are names that I know him by, because he was this in my life. Until I learned that he was I am. I am that I am. So whatever you need, he has shown me that I am that. See, there are testimonies in my life to where he showed up in my life. And when he showed up as Jesus Christ, when I needed a job, he showed up as Jehovah. When I needed peace, he showed up as Jehovah Shalom. But when I needed a Lord, he didn't show up and bless, because all the names are associated with some type of blessing. But when I needed a Lord and I needed a Savior, he showed up as Jesus Christ. When I found Jesus Christ, I didn't want blessings, because I found the one that had every name, the name that is above every name. So when I understood that name that was above every name, he gave me everything. He gave me purpose. He gave me joy. He gave me peace. He gave me love. He gave me understanding. He gave me wisdom. He gave me purpose. But in the midst of it all, he gave me me. He gave me him. He had to show me this is the real you. This is the you that I created. This is the you that I loved. So I understand that as a kid, Moses' mother loved him, but God hid him in Egypt. See, these are not scriptures that I just read. This is my life. I can see my life painted through the course of the pages. I can see it. I was the one that was hidden in the world. Just as Moses was hidden in the world, I was hidden in the world. See, I know the trauma that came from my childhood because I know the enemy wanted to kill me as a child. I told you about my stories in the beginning. There was a hit that was sent out only to kill one child because the enemy understood the time. Because the enemy never wanted me to come into this time to be able to interact and help people that was where I was when I was. So now that I am where I am today, I can tell them today that even though that I was a diamond in the rough, but not understanding you had to have an eye in order to see me. God polished me. And diamonds only look good when they reflect the light. When the light hit the diamond, the light is the one that shows the beauty and the brilliance of that diamond. So when people see me, it's not me. It's the light that's reflecting off of me. It's Christ. It's Christ. And for him to convert my life and everything that I lost, I never forget that God started telling me everything that I lost and everything that was taken. I never forget when he told me, he said, everything you lost, you're going to get it back. I didn't know that all of this would come out of that, would come out of me. But as I followed him and he led me, everything just started being revealed to me. Look, this has been there. The church has been there. Your wife is in there. Your other children, they are in there. You know, the radio station is in there. Your books, they are in there. All these things that God placed in me, I did not understand and could not understand. But as I followed, he revealed. This is what I need you to do next. This is what's in you. This is what I purpose for you to do. All of that, as he led me and I followed him, everything was revealed. And, you know, with me, I mean, just honestly, you know, just me just tearing up. I feel like just tearing up now because of my love and my compassion that I have for him. There's nothing that I desire more than him. And I learned when you're following God, he'll leave you a friends. He'll leave you a family. He'll isolate you just to spend time with you. Whew. Just so he can elevate you. I've learned that. As people in the country preserve fruits, they got to put it in the jar and seal it. And there was places in my life, I can remember I never forget, that even the people in my church didn't understand it. There are times I did not go to church, and I went from 275 pounds to 180 pounds. And people thought I was sick. They thought I was dying. They didn't know that all I did was fast, pray, and read my Bible. That's all I desired. Food was not even important to me. I only wanted him. I would fast and fast and fast and read my Bible. Nothing captivated my attention. Nothing. It was him. And my desire is still the same. It's him.
I definitely believe you. Everything that you express because you live your life out loud. Everything that you preach, everything that you teach, you actually model it. And that's one of the biggest blessings, even in knowing you, is knowing how God actually allows your life to be modeled and shows that you are a true example as a father, as a husband, how you can truly overcome things and labels and stereotypes and different things that people have said about you or even things that you think about yourself. You became the total opposite of it. So transformation is real. Transfiguration is real. It can happen. And God is showing us even here today that your change is literally around the corner. You just have to set your heart and your mind upon Him. Apostle is truly the epitome of seeking ye first His kingdom and all of His righteousness, and all things will be added to it. And I truly believe that everything that you went through, you're still going to reap the benefits and the harvest because of all the seeds that you sown. One thing that I even heard, and as you express your life and different things, is that you knew and understood obedience, because even in the world, you were moving off of orders, off of what you were told, and you did it wholeheartedly. So you understand what following truly is.
You know, one of the things I'll say, and I asked God the question. I asked him this. And I said, after everything that I've done, why did you choose me? After all the people that I've hurt, the people that I abused, not physically, but I broke hearts and all that. I asked him, I say, why did you choose me? Why? And God told me two things. He said, the reason you hurt people when I became a punisher, I punished people. He said, you did this for family. I'll never forget, he said, you did this because of the love that you had for your family. This is why you did this. He says, because he said, you did this for your family. Now I've called you, and I want you to do this for my family. You punished the enemy. I cried like a baby. I cried. The second thing that he told me, he said these words to me. I was just crying as he was telling me, and he told me, he said, I chose you. The reason that you were chosen and that your sin couldn't take you out, he said, because I chose you before you ever sinned. And if your sin could take you out, then I couldn't be your Savior. And I even cried even the more because he told me your sin could not take you out of my assignment. I chose you before you had sinned. And to this day, you know, God knows exactly there's nothing that I wouldn't do. There's nothing that I wouldn't go through. I'd go through a lot. But there's nothing because I know him. There's a difference in knowing him. It's knowing him. There's no sermon, no scriptures compared to the encounters. I've had encounters with God. Encounters, and I think that that's what people need. And it's great to hear sermons, and it's great to be able to, you know, quote scriptures and all that. But if you don't have an encounter, sooner or later, the sermon, and you'll grow weak without an encounter. God has given me multiple encounters of him, but he will show up in my life. I'm talking about show up in a way that's unprecedented. I'm not talking about giving me a house, giving me a car. I'm talking about his presence showing up in my life, showing me him, allowing me to smell him. All encounters I've had with him, seeing his face. See, it's encounters. When he can show you stuff like that, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. That's nothing else matters. And so I live my life only to please him, only to glorify him. So I can go through all of this, tragedies and trials, and people mistreating me and talking about me because I don't want to disappoint him. It'll have nothing to do with the people. One last thing, and I'm going to say this, and you can answer the question. I'll never forget, God gave me a revelation many, many years ago when I was going through my ordeal. And God asked me a question. He said, if you can see me everywhere that you go, how would you respond in adversity? If somebody came to you and they were aggressive towards you, how would you respond if you saw me? He asked me that question. And I said, I will respond like this. And he said, what makes you think that I'm not there? He said, I'm not outside of you, but I'm in you. And I'm listening to you based on the adversity that comes to you. It taught me a valuable lesson. So now I know how to respond. I'm not responding because I'm weak. I'm only responding this way because I'm submitted.
Okay, I'm for just a final question. Catch me when I say this. I have to. What school did you go to? Because I know, you have biblical colleges and schools. You went to a very unique school.
I did.
What school is
I
that?
went to the College of Biblical Studies, and I think because how God taught me, it was completely different. So when I went to school, even though I went to counseling school and all that, and got certifications and all type of stuff, plaques and all this for counseling and all that, but I left school in the first semester. After that first semester, I left because it was not what God was teaching me. And they were saying good stuff that was relevant for them, but not relevant for me. And I think one of the things that really that pushed me to the edge, because how God taught me that you can stop storms. If Jesus said, the works that I do shall you do, and greater works than these shall you do. If Jesus stopped the storm, then we have the same ability to stop the storms if our faith be it unto you according to your faith. And I think the things that I was hearing from professors that was teaching all over the world, they were educated, they were equipped, they had doctrines, PhDs, they had all of this, but they didn't have any faith. And when I heard them teach, my spirit turned upside down because they were teaching for a textbook and they didn't know him. They were teaching biblical truth. They were teaching you how to study. They were teaching you hermeneutics. They were teaching you, and it was great to be able to teach teachers, but they still didn't know him. They would show you how to remember scriptures, but in you remembering scriptures, you knew them, but you still didn't know him. And I think that was the challenge for me when I saw that. I said, God, I cannot stay here. And there's a school of the Spirit that God began to teach me. He started taking me in the school of the Spirit, and he started showing me mysteries. He started showing me stuff that people don't have any idea. So when I teach from the place that he's taught me for mysteries. I teach why things happen. I teach why generational curses happen. I teach where stuff people don't get jobs and how stuff break down. I teach where demonic powers comes in. I expose all of that because he taught me from the school of the Spirit. He taught me from that. So when people, I used to have people that went to those schools try to humiliate me. I've had them come to me and ask me questions, and I laugh because I've some pastor came to me and started talking about eschatology because I didn't have a hair on my face then. I was young looking in. I didn't have my and I smiled. But by the end of that meeting, his wife had an issue. And all of his wisdom and stuff that he had learned in school, he didn't know what the problem was, but God revealed it to me because he taught me in the school of the Spirit. And I told him the mystery that was behind his wife's problem. And today, I believe that he started his ministry back based on what was said that night. So I don't care about insults. I don't care about any of that because there is no attachment to my name. I don't have a name. I represent his. So people that know me from the past, they know all of my old names. They know me from then. But God left me as evidence that he's real because they knew how real I was then by the names they gave me. So now when they see my life, they said, I can't believe you're serving Jesus. I can't believe you. If you're serving God, then God must be real because we know how real you used to be. God left my life as a testimony to those that were a part of my past, but now they know my future. And they can see that he's not changing. They can see that this is not an overnight thing. They can see that this is not a fluke. God has left me as the evidence that he can change, that he can give mercy, that the grace of God lives. I am the evidence of it. So when people see me now, Like, man, you really. And here's the thing: the people that I used to hang with now are my greatest advocates. They are saying Christ can change. They are saying that people can change. They are saying that people grow up. They are saying that God is real. They are saying it based on my life. They're telling other people about my life, how Christ changed me because I followed him.
Well, listen, I thank you, Apostle, for being here tonight. If you have not watched this, I pray that you would go back and that you will watch and you would tune in on the testimony of Apostle Tyrance Greer about how he came to Christ. Hopefully, we can do like a part two, go into the deeper things. Everything about your life is very much so in depth, but I truly believe that the more that you release, the more that you comes out of your mouth is greater mysteries and secrets to be revealed of the kingdom of heaven. So we probably do a part two. Listen, again, we thank you all for tuning in tonight. Apostle, again, it's always a pleasure to be here with you on Merge, broadcasting live from the Vision Channel. We'll see you next week around the same time. Good night.